Be Reasonable. This is a BR Peeps production. Remember, folks, we talk about politics on this channel. So we are heavily vested in the 2024 campaign. And of course, we also do a news wrap show, top five on the weekend. It is the weekend, so we will be discussing, if I get that out, the top five news stories of the week. Remember, this show is dedicated to common people who really don't have the time to kind of dissect the information that they receive from their news portal, whether it be MSNBC, Fox News, Newsmax, the network channel, wherever it may be. It's our job to kind of take the top five stories and kind of go into a little bit more depth about what it is that you can expect to see out of these stories. So without further ado, folks, let's just jump right into it. My goal is not to hold you long today, but I know it's Sunday, right? And so we're talking about the top five news stories ending the week 12/16/2024. Check. It's 2023. Almost 24. Not there yet. But anyway, okay, coming in at the number 5 spot, folks, got to talk about Hunter Biden. He, of course, met the American people outside of Congress on Wednesday. He indicated that he wanted to have a public hearing. He indicated he had no desire to sit in a private venue with Republicans. And he pretty much said that he didn't want to do that because he knew they were going to cherry pick his testimony and run out in front of the media and claim they have information against him and also against his father. He indicated that his father had no idea about his business dealings and that it wasn't something that he and his father talked about. He also said that guys like Comer and Jim Jordan were, of course, again, trying to just harvest the information, cherry pick it, and just make it sound like there was some nefarious Biden ring and that they were selling secrets and doing other stuff that we don't know for certain whether or not it happened. Kind of doubt it did. However, let's just give it the benefit of the doubt and say that Republicans may have something, even though they haven't showed their hand at all. So all that being said, here's how that turns out. All of that information that I just said, here's what will happen. He didn't want to meet private, right? He wanted to meet public. Republicans tried to say it was process for them to have a closed door hearing and then have a public hearing after that. They will probably file a contempt charge now, and they will probably send it over to the Justice Department to review. I tend to think that the Justice Department will that case probably is not going to go far. And the reason is it's a political process, right? Comer had given Hunter Biden the option to do a private hearing or public. Hunter opted for the public. So if this does get a referral to the Justice Department, I think it gets kicked back to the House or they don't move forward. Kind of my opinion. Now, people can settle on how it is that they feel about that. I think not moving forward with it is probably the best thing to do, given the fact that the option was given or extended, and Hunter picked one, and all of a sudden Republicans didn't like his option. So I just think that they're just arguing over spilled milk. They'll have the cudgel to say that the Justice Department prefers two different there's a separate Justice Department for you and one for me, however it is that they wish to spend it. But the bottom line is they're going to dress it up however it is that they wish to dress it up in order to get the mileage that they're trying to get out of this situation. Now, I will tell you this, and I'm not going to hold you long, so I'll keep this brief. I'm going to tell you, there's 535 members of Congress. I can almost assure you that a majority of them have family members working as lobbyists, registered agents, or whatever it may be in some capacity, making money, whether it be with our foreign adversaries because of economic interests or with our allies because of, again, economic or military interests, whatever the case may be. This is nothing new. Now, Republicans want to make it into a story. So I think if they really want to make it into a story, we need to investigate all of them. Because again, this is not just happening in one particular place. I would assure that if the media were to go out and look, I would imagine, again, a majority of them have family members working in different capacities. We call it nepotism on the lower level, but it's kind of the same thing even at the congressional level. All right, so are they doing anything wrong? No, they're not, because it's not against the law. May not look good, but it's not against the law. And that's kind of how that case ends up. All right, so that's the number 5 story. Talk about the number 4 story, dovetails or tangential to the number 5 story. We have to talk about the Biden impeachment inquiry that is going forward. I do believe also on Wednesday, Republicans voted to go ahead and press forward into an inquiry into the Biden administration, looking for corruption charges, right? So it has to meet the bill for high crimes and misdemeanors in order to impeach the president. They're going to try to meet that bar. I thought it was somewhat interesting that you got all Republicans to sign off on the inquiry, right? So after the inquiry takes place, they gather information. I can guarantee you there will not be a straight line on this information. It's going to be all over the place, and it's going to be kind of like throw darts at it. Let's talk about this without it making any sense whatsoever. I would imagine if Democrats were worth their salt, what they'll do is try to draw a chronology to these events, and we can see when Biden was in the Senate, when Biden was in the White House, when these payments took place, what were they for, all the rest of it, and when Biden was out of office. All of that information is important, and it's important to see how it all is figured in and put together. Because if he is in office, if he is accepting bribes or kickbacks and the rest, yes, he needs to be impeached. I just find it highly unlikely that that's the case, but I'm interested and entertained to see Republicans go through this process. Now, what do I think will happen? All right, so they got the votes for the inquiry. I don't believe that they're going to get the votes to move forward with impeachment. And I don't know what the charge will be. It probably will be some form of bribery. They'll call it a high crime and so on and so forth. But the gist of it is there are some 35 seats or so that are in Republican hands, that are in Democrat districts, if I'm saying that properly, or districts where Biden had won previously. And remember, the state of New York alone, there are 5 or 6 seats there that are now held by Republicans. And all of those maps in New York are under review. So there will be new maps in 2024 for the election cycle that will favor Democrats because obviously they're in control. Other thing of note, remember that at the beginning of 2024, the majority in the House will shrink from 222 members down to like 217, 216, somewhere in that neighborhood, 1 vote or 2 votes. Okay, so that being the case, they need everybody to go along with this impeachment. And if the evidence isn't there to support it, I would imagine there'll probably be some 20 or 30 individuals that are Republicans who will not vote to impeach because they are in districts that are going to be tough to win. So I don't think it goes any further than the inquiry, but we'll find out. Also keep in mind that next year, with the election and all the other things that are happening, it's not a short year. It's a jam-packed year. Right. And so there won't be much in the way of legislation happening after the CR gets done in January and February. So the time for the inquiry will really probably kick off and get really hot and heavy sometime during the month of March. So you got March until probably, if you're going to impeach him, you got to do it before the election. And so you got to do it, I think, really before September because the CR is going to be really interesting. Okay, we'll get a chance to see if Republicans can walk and chew gum at the same time, because if they do a CR in January and February and they push that out to September or October, they're going to have their hands full when it comes to doing an impeachment and doing the CR. So it'll be interesting to see how they juggle that. I don't think it gets the votes necessary in order to push it to the House, to the Senate. If it does make it in September, then that gives the Senate, a month or so. That's going to be tough for them. It's going to be really tough because I think that, is it half or a third? I think it's a third of the seats in the Senate are up. So there will be people there who will not want to be messing around with the impeachment. If there's nothing there, that probably gets voted down right away, and we are into the 2024, the heat of the election cycle. So that's what we'll probably see. I don't think that it will go far. If it does, it won't make it out of the Senate. So, all right. So, and if it makes it to the Senate, then they can say that they impeached Joe Biden, and Donald Trump will be happy. And Joe Biden will have an impeachment on his record. But I can tell you what, I'll stack that impeachment up, a partisan impeachment, up against all the bipartisan work that he was able to get done over these past 4 years. Once we get to 24, those 4 years. So more than the Trump administration was able to get through. Remember, because he didn't want to work with Democrats anyway, so it's kind of hard to get anything done when you're not working with both parties. So we'll see how it all turns out. But that, folks, guess what? That is the number 4 story. Biden's inquiry going forward, along with the number 5 story about Hunter Biden. On to the number 3 story, which is of note. We have to talk about Rudolph Giuliani. And man, you guys are familiar with the meme or the skibbity paps on the reels where they say, "Dang, Rudy." So here's a case where you got to say, "Dang, Rudy." $150 million lawsuit that the plaintiffs won. So Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss won their civil case. So the jury found Rudy Giuliani liable in this particular case, and they said that the damages were worth $150 million. Now, great on Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss. However, I am here to tell you that they're probably not going to see a red cent of that money, because if you and I, look, we all watch movies, right? We have time to do that. And I'll just remind you of the Rainmaker, right? Rainmaker, this firm goes after this insurance company for some bad business practices of denying. They win the case, and immediately they file bankruptcy. And in this particular case, it will not be any different. I look forward to Rudy Giuliani filing bankruptcy, and Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman will be in line with the other creditors, trying to get money out of Rudolph Giuliani. And at the end of the day, he probably will lose all of his investments. He probably will get to keep his pension and his Social Security. I'm not an attorney, but I don't think that they can attach judgments to pension nor Social Security. I'm almost certain of that, but if I'm wrong, somebody give me a shout in the comment section and let me know where I may err in this particular case. Now, I will tell you, my degree is in political science. I love economics. Law, I'm far afield of what's in my wheelhouse. But I just think you can't attach a judgment to a person's pension, neither to a person's Social Security. But I could be wrong. Anyway, so that's kind of how that will end up. But I got to tell you, how did we get here? We got here because Donald Trump and Rudolph Giuliani were lying about Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman's involvement in some form of an election scam, right? This CD-ROM, or not CD, disk drive, or disk, whatever it was, flash drive that they had, supposedly changing votes and all the rest of it, which no one was able to find any information to support that. Rudolph Giuliani couldn't support that in a civil case, so $150 million settlement. Now, I will tell you, this puts Trump up to bat. Since they won this case, Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss, they will be pursuing Donald Trump for the same purpose, same reason. They're looking for a judgment in their favor because there's no information there's no information to support that they had anything to do with any election irregularity. So Stay tuned for that case. That case is probably pending. If I were the attorney, I'd be filing that case next week, or sorry, this week. So it's Sunday morning. This week, they should be filing that case against Donald Trump this week. Of course, it won't get heard until sometime in 2025. And of course, it will go through the litany of Trump claiming immunity and all the rest of it. We'll see how that take place too in this particular case. But you know what? Trump's going to be out some money too. So, because there's no proof. Hey, look, they went through 65 different courts trying to file motions to claim that there was election irregularity or some type of fraud. And in all cases, they could not find any evidence. Therefore, the cases were dismissed or they were... well, you file a case and then you don't want it to be heard. So it was dismissed. Okay, so they were dropped for the plaintiff dropped them or the defense or the judge dropped it, one or the other, right? So we'll see the same thing happen here with Trump in a civil action against him for the same purpose for Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss. I think that they end up winning that one as well. I don't see Donald Trump coming off any money either. He'll try to string it out forever to keep from having to pay anyone. I don't even think Jean Carroll got her money yet. So, and she won that case earlier this year. So there's that. So anyway, that's the number 3 story. On our way to the number 1 story, guess what? We have to drop off at the number 2 story. We have to talk about the Defense Authorization Act, which passed this week. So some $841 billion authorized for the Defense Department and to the Pentagon. It will pave the way for service members to receive a 5.2% increase in pay, as well as civilians. It's notable for what's not present with it. We didn't see the supplemental, that is money set aside for both Israel and for the Ukraine. And between the two, the supplemental is very important because they're running out of money. There is what's called a PDA, Presidential Drawdown Authority, where I think that there's like $5.2 billion left over in reserve. We think that money will go pretty fast. Remember that the supplemental was only for like $150 or $160 million for certain equipment and ordinances. So important that gets across the finish line. However, the Senate is staying until the end of the end of this week, the 22nd, but the House is already on recess. So as I mentioned in a previous broadcast, I didn't see how the supplemental was going to get across the finish line. It gets kicked into next year. It probably gets rolled into the continued resolutions for the month of January and February. Also, again, makes it tough for the schedule for the inquiry into the Biden administration and Biden in particular for fraud and bribery and abuse and whatever else that they'll probably try to label Biden for doing and whatever. So it's just going to be hard for any supplemental money to come out or come up. Therefore, it's bad for Ukraine. It's bad for NATO. And of course, it's bad for the United States' reputation. All of that being said, all of this lays at the front door of Republicans, and it's just one other area where you can look at Republicans and say, I don't know who you are. I really don't know who you are. The supplemental, remember the president said that he would give the Republican House members, they wanted border protections. They had a list of demands. The president said he was going to meet those demands. Then they pulled that deal off the table and went home. All right, so I'll ask you, are they really for border protection? No, they're not. Are they for giving money to Ukraine? No, they are not. Are they for giving money to Israel? The jury is still up in the air on that, but if I had to guess, I'm going to tell you it looks like they should be for it, right? But they're probably not. So there you have it. So where do we end up? We got money for the defense in order to operate. We didn't get the supplemental that we needed for Ukraine and for Israel. So we're kind of in a quagmire where, again, more of an embarrassment that we'll see, but ultimately it will mean, for me, I think that this ultimately means that Ukraine ends up shouldering the heavy burden, and I think that they end up having to, it's not really suing for peace, but settling on some type of peace accords with the Russians where they give up some more real estate. And like I said, as they give up this real estate, this only Russia licks their chops at this. So it only makes it more of an issue for the Russians to try to come back at a later date and do this again, or look at other places where they can acquire some territory. I think the next place on the Russians list will be Estonia, if they are to get their way. I do not believe Estonia is a NATO member, but let's find out real quick. Is the nation of Estonia a NATO member? Yes, Estonia is a NATO member as of 2024. So probably not Estonia. And the reason why I say probably not Estonia, because it will trigger what's called an Article 5. An Article 5 is an announcement to NATO members. A member is being attacked, therefore we will come in support of that member. And I don't believe Russia wants to go that far. They may try to chew up some other real estate that doesn't belong to a NATO member. However, this axis that has formed between North Korea, China, Russia, and Iran, we will see this revisited in the near future. There's no doubt in my mind. So you can fight them by proxy in Ukraine, or you can fight them in an all-out engagement somewhere down the line. And I think that's where you eventually will head. History being our guide, we can kind of look and see how that all turns out. All right, so that is the number 2 story. Remember, defense authorization money issue, but no supplemental, right? In the number 3 spot, we talked about Rudolph Giuliani giving up $150 million. However, we don't see that he's going to, Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman will see any red cent of that, because it will be tied up with the bankruptcy, and there's probably a few other creditors in line before they get any money. We talked about the number 4 story, which was the inquiry into Joe Biden. And of course, the number 5 story, which was Hunter Biden, which is a tangent relationship story to the Biden inquiry into impeachment. So in the number 1 spots, folks, we have to talk about Israel and Gaza for yet another week. And we have to talk about it in relation to the hostages. Look, this past week, we saw 3 hostages with, I guess they were waving a white flag, and the Israelis mistaking them as Palestinians and decided to shoot them, or shot 2 of them. The other one ran into a building and was hiding for cover, speaking Hebrew, and they shot him anyway. So there'll probably be some people in the Russian IDF that will lose their job. But if I were a hostage today in Gaza, being held by Hamas, yes, Hamas, they're bad people. But I'm here to tell you, if I were a hostage, I would be more worried about my supposed rescuers than the people who are holding me hostage. Because it seems to me that Israel is kind of hell-bent in blowing up everything in Gaza. So that means there's no doubt in my mind, 140 hostages are probably more in danger of being killed by Israelis than they are of being killed by Hamas. That's the bottom line. Now, and you can talk about again, what's on the other side of this? It's nothing good, because it turns out that you're probably going to see the Gazans or your Palestinians there get pretty much pushed out into the sea or relocated up to the West Bank, right? Giving up that territory. Israel will start putting in settlements and the rest of it. Israel doesn't want the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. They don't want Arab peacekeepers in Gaza. A lot of interesting stories surrounding Israel's relationship with Qatar in direct or indirect relations with Hamas. So it looks like Qatar was giving Hamas money in order to create some stability. But of course, we all knew, and Israel knew too, that that money would be used for attacks against Israel. So, and they did nothing about it. So that's a really interesting dynamic. We'll see exactly how that all turns out. Look, Benjamin Netanyahu is probably a guy that will not be around for office during the next election cycle. In my estimation, he probably needs to be removed from office immediately, given the information that has come out so far. I mean, you knew that they knew about the attack in advance. This money that they were giving Qatar the blessing in order to give to Hamas, that's a suspect. You know that at the end of the day, when it comes to the reason why Israel's eye was off the ball when I look at it, the read I get out of it, the reason why their eye was off the ball is because Netanyahu was trying to save his own hide. Remember, he still has a case pending, right? And that for fraud, right? And it was his job in order to change the process. I mean, the Supreme Court is given some authority in order to make some legislative decisions. They can revisit some legislative, but he didn't want them to do that. So he's looking for the legislative body to give him the green light on his fraud case. Or how do I say this? He's looking for the legislative body to bail him out with legislation that makes the allegations less likely to pursue legally. Okay. And since their eye was off the ball, it made it easy for the Palestinians and Hamas in particular to attack Israel. Okay, now that says a whole lot to me. I'm trying to get it out so you understand it. But the gist of it is this. When you have this strongman mentality, you're only interested in putting yes men around you in order to get the response you're looking for. And ultimately, it creates a blind spot. So this should also be an object lesson for the American people. You have the Trump team who only wishes to put people around Donald Trump who will give Donald Trump this authoritarian type power. That is a blind spot for the country, which only leads to bad things happening. So when you look at Israel, you look at America, and you say to yourself, or should be saying to yourself, when and where will the next attack come from on U.S. soil? Because it's probably right around the corner. So think about that. So again, in the number one spot, I got to tell you, I feel for these hostages because, again, they are being held prisoner by Hamas, but I believe they're more in danger of just being blown up by the Israeli IDF, the Defense Force, Israeli Defense Force. So pray for the hostages, right? Because I think that they need it. Israel's talking about flooding tunnels, right? What if the hostages are in the tunnels? They've thought about that. And imagine if they're indiscriminately just killing people, if you're coming up out of the tunnel, you're probably a target, right? You're coming out of the tunnel because they're flooded, right? So you're a target. So indiscriminate killing. Again, I believe in Israel's right to self-determination as much as I believe in Palestine's right to self-determination. I also believe that Hamas, they are bad actors. But I also believe that Netanyahu and the people that he has surrounding him, they too are bad actors. So when you have bad actors on both stages, I believe that sets up major problems down the road, because I believe Israel hangs on to Gaza and they push the Palestinian people out. I believe that they only create more bad or ill will from those Gazans who've been pushed out and displaced wherever it is that they may be. And I ultimately just believe that this blind sight of the Israeli government ultimately impacts the Israeli people. So again, what happens on the other side of this, it's not good. How long does it take to materialize? It depends on how the, I guess you would say, military engagement lasts, and how do we see all this stuff shaking out and setting up. So that being said, folks, I mean, look, a lot going on in the world. A lot of destabilizing features or factors happening in many corners of the world. So, I mean, head on a swivel. See something, say something. Right? So, all that being said, folks, those are our top 5 news stories of the week. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends about us. A lot more stories coming. Got some shorts ready for you. I had a system that went down earlier this week, but we got some shorts that we're going to start to launch next week. Some of those may be dated because I had some really good stuff in there, but it's kind of time sensitive. Oh, I still have that. I got a really good short for you. We'll talk about that. That's probably the first one I'll do next week. I watched that movie, the one produced by the Obama production company. I guess you can say that. I have to do some reading on it again too. I think it's an Obama production, but very interesting movie if you haven't seen it. But I'm going to talk about that in a short, so I won't say any more about that. But hey, folks, it's Sunday morning. I know you're about to get out of bed and do some things. I want you to enjoy your day. I know some football's on. I know some basketball's on. Hey, the PNC, I think the Pro-Am is on Sunday too. Although the weather down in Florida looking kind of dicey, right? So it's going to be some extreme weathers to deal with when it comes to finishing the PNC golf event, Pro-Am event. So anyway, a lot going on today, folks. Enjoy your day. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends about us. Look forward to reporting a lot of good information and giving you a bird's eye view as to what to expect, right? When all of these things happen, we'll see if I'm right. At the end of the day, you're either right or wrong, right? I think I may be right, but we'll see how it all kind of turns out. And I don't know if you're going to keep score at home, but you should. Either I'm right or I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I think it's comical if I'm wrong. I mean, you don't throw tomatoes at a guy like me because I'm wrong, but you know, I could be wrong. But in certain cases, in these particular cases, I don't think I'm wrong because I've seen this show way too many times. So that being said, I think I have a pretty good understanding of how the system works. So all that being said, folks, like and subscribe, tell your friends about us. We are done for the day. Hope you enjoyed these top 5 stories. And guess what, folks? We're done. So see you later this week for the next show.